It's time to kick ass and chew bubble gum. And I'm all out of gum.
Hello, welcome back to A Boring Revolution, your number one news source for everything in regards to The Boring Company. Hello everyone and welcome back. Got a great little topic for you today, the induced demand conundrum. Now, someone has been sending out a few memes in regards to this on Reddit. I thought it was quite funny, but it's completely incorrect, and I'm going to explain today why that is the case and what we can do to kind of resolve this kind of issue. So, first of all, thanks for tuning in. As per usual, please like to the video. Then, if you've not already, please subscribe and please comment on the video. Tell me what you think about induced demand. So, here is the meme. When they've finished yet another tunnel, and now I'm driving 10 hours every day to fill the induced demand. Now, it is quite funny, and that guy's face certainly does does look quite great, really. But hey, it's forward thinking because the Boring Company is going to operate more like public transport than kind of a toll road, as it were. So it's not correct, but it does kind of bring up that question about induced demand. Like, is this a phenomenon that is really going to affect the Boring Company? Or is that just applicable to standard kind of roads or motorways, dual carriageways, that kind of thing? So, first of all, let's start off with kind of an explanation of what induced demand is. So, if you build more space for motor traffic, you will get more motor traffic. Induced demand is the concept that building more roads will generate more demand for those roads. And certainly when you apply it to roads, you know, this sort of phenomenon certainly does occur, especially in the US, which is very, very kind of motor vehicle oriented. However, what would happen if we applied induced demand to, say, a new metro line or a set of cycle lanes, or if we made improvements to train stations and added longer trains? Would it apply then? And absolutely it would. If you looked at a project, for example, say like Crossrail in London, and you looked at how many people are using that service over the next sort of 3 years, starting sort of this year, you'd notice an increase in the number of people using it. As it's easy to use, more and more people will start to use it. And that will encourage other people to use it. It will encourage people to move into the areas in and around Crossrail. And therefore, it's kind of a snowball effect. And ultimately, what you end up with is essentially, you can't really see that picture, but something like this, except inside the trains. So, all in all, it doesn't matter what you build, there is going to be induced demand. So that's kind of the first real flaw in it, really, is it's not just applicable to kind of public roads, as it were. So, I'm not saying that you shouldn't do these things. You should absolutely do these things. But you need to do a little bit of everything if you're going to solve that congestion issue. Now, if you have a long memory like myself, you probably remember this tweet. Induced demand is one of the most irrational theories I've ever heard. Correlation is not causation. So just because there's a correlation between increased traffic or increased congestion and the construction of an additional lane on a motorway does not mean it is causation. If the transport system exceeds public transport needs, there will be very little traffic. So essentially what he's saying there, if you built enough capacity in there that there was not enough kind of supply of people wanting to use that, customers, commuters, then this kind of phenomenon would essentially tail off, and there wouldn't be congestion. There would be a nice open roadway or an open train, whatever you want to use as your example, and it would work. So what Elon Musk essentially saying is, if we build out the Boring Company loop system at high capacity, we have lots and lots and lots of tunnels, then it's not an issue. We're not going to be burdened with excessive congestion, even with 50 different tunnels and 5,000 different vehicles or robo-vans, as I like to call them now. So correlation is not causation, which is absolutely true. Absolutely true. Right, so this is something that I've been thinking about for a while, but I've not really talked about it on the channel. And you look at this motorway and you think, well, it's just kind of a typical motorway. Look at all these cars, they've all got one people in. But if you look at this lane in particular, let's get rid of that. You might notice something. This is a carpool lane. All these people have at least 2 passengers in, all these cars, and some have more. And that increases the capacity of this lane by easily 100%, possibly a lot more. So most of these vehicles here, if you look at this car here and you look at this car here, they have 1 passenger, and for 99% of journeys they have 1 passenger, and that's never going to change. However, this lane here flows quite nicely because it encourages people to share vehicles, and that is what is going to happen thanks to improvements in technology, battery electric vehicles, robo-taxis, and just new businesses that are going to pop up, and things like this, more carpool lanes. We might see more carpool lanes in the future. And it's more efficient, a lot more efficient if you can put more people in more vehicles, in less vehicles, sorry. So this picture might look like absolute mayhem, but there is some order here, and this kind of case study can be further accelerated, and you might end up in a situation where most of the vehicles in the future have maybe 2.5, 3 passengers on average, and that will make a monumental difference. We're talking that, you know, we're doubling, easily doubling, maybe even tripling the number of cars that can use this kind of interchange, as it were. There's a lot of other things as well that are happening in the world, and that is why induced demand, when people refer to it in the transport sense, it relies on a lot of assumptions. And a lot of those assumptions, I believe, are very, very likely to change over the next 10 to 15 years. Exceedingly likely to change. And that is why I'm going to bring them up today. Because as much as I support building more mass transit, and that certainly does help, it doesn't get rid of congestion. It helps, it certainly does help a little bit, but you're still going to be sat in traffic for hours in most US cities if you're heading in the wrong direction. So the main kind of assumption that I'm starting to look at and think, well, this is going to change in a big way, is the average number of passengers per car. I think that this potentially could increase by 150, maybe even 180% over the next, it might only be in the next 5 years, you never know, but let's say in the next 10 to 15 years, that makes a big difference. And if you add an extra lane, you are getting much more out of that lane in 10 years' time than you are doing today if you built it instantaneously. So that's a big change that's going to happen, and potentially that could eat up all the supply of people that want to use transport into any given city. Another thing is when you do this, that you focus more on roads. What if, you know, like in a local government was building lots of tram lines at the same time that they were building more roads? What if they built, you know, 10 miles of tramway and they built a 20-mile extra lane? That would have a big impact. So, you know, a lot of people these days are focusing on metros and things like that. So again, that's not assumed in this kind of effect, this induced demand. So major roads remain free to use. So toll roads are coming. Eventually, governments are going to move to the toll road kind of system. The reason they're going to do that is because they can't tax petrol and diesel. It just won't be possible in the future because consumption will have fallen 80, 90, maybe even 95%. So they have to move away from that. The only way to do this fairly is to tax or make you pay for every mile of motorway or dual carriageway that you use. So there won't be as many people who can afford that, therefore that there won't be the same number of people that can come on and use an extra lane. Car ownership remains above 60%. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to fall way down, possibly well below 50%, maybe below 40%. And what we're going to see is more people car sharing, more people renting cars, more people using services like robo-taxis and Uber and Lyft and that sort of thing. And other services will come online too. So that again will feed into how many passengers we have per car, and also it'll push some people into using buses and trams and cycling as well. So again, that's pushing people away from this induced demand kind of theory. Working from home as well, massive increases in people working from home. I think that around 15 to 20% of people will be working from home in 2030, based on just my own network of friends. And they're saying, yeah, we've been given the option to work from home, and literally everyone in the office is taking it, other than, a few of the old guys. It seems to be people over the age of 50 just don't want to work from home, but everyone else just is like absolutely ecstatic. So I think that 15 to 20% of people will work from home, which is way more than the 5% at the moment. It might even be 30, 40%. Who knows? That obviously means there's less people who want to travel into a city, and therefore there's less people who could fill that extra lane. And also another one, the road network remains 2D. Obviously this feeds into the Boring Company. Boring Company wants to build a 3D network of tunnels. Now we're not talking 10 levels deep. It might only be 4 or 5 levels deep, but that makes a big difference if you have hundreds of tunnels, and you can avoid busy intersections, because a lot of congestion is caused by busy kind of off ramps and on ramps. So intersections, and if that is gone, because you're under the road, then that's going to make a big difference for everyone's commuting times. Obviously, you need robo-taxis and robo-vans to make that happen. So there you go. I mean, in induced demand, potentially this theory or this effect might disappear in the future. It might be that you build an extra lane and it actually does make traveling to work easier. And then a lot of people, especially in public transport, are going to get very, very worried, because if you can just build an extra lane, it's going to be 20 to 30% cheaper than building an entirely new tram network. But in reality, what we want to do is get rid of gridlock. It's not enough to reduce your commute from 40 minutes to 30 minutes by building an extra lane. What we want to do is reduce your commute to, say, 7 or 8 minutes. Now, how do we do that? Well, there's multiple ways of doing that. One of the kind of least talked about ways of doing that is to increase. It's one of the most difficult ways of doing it, but it's certainly an option on the table that I think we should have been doing this 50 years ago. But a lot of cities have favoured urban sprawl, and if you're travelling 10 to 15 miles to get into the city centre, then to work in an office in the middle of the city, it seems bonkers to me. We need more high-rise residential blocks. We need to pack more people into a smaller area. Ironically, people will actually live better in that kind of situation. And it needs to be high density as well. We don't want any of these kind of super high-rise New York apartments that are exceedingly expensive and you've got one apartment per floor. We want 8 apartments per floor, if not 10. Boring Company tunnel network, ultimately, if you built out a very, very large network and that was manned or kind of run with robo-vans, or hundreds and hundreds of robo-vans, maybe thousands, ultimately that's going to make things very, very easy in terms of travelling around. People will use that and congestion will fall considerably. However, what I will say is you can't just do one of these things on this list. You have to do at least 4 or 5 of these things to eliminate gridlock congestion. If you want to just reduce journey times, then yeah, build a Boring Company tunnel network, but you might have to wait 30 minutes, 45 minutes to get access to a robo-van because there's so many people using it. Obviously, there's like the obvious ones. Build a light rail system with multiple lines. It's not enough just to build one metro line. It just doesn't work, guys. You need to build maybe 3, maybe 4 metro lines, constantly extend them, and have enough vehicles on those lines as well, and have a high speed as well. Ideally, you want, a top speed of 50, 60 miles per hour, maybe more, maybe 70 miles an hour. An affordable robo-taxi network. It's no good just having a really good robo-taxi network if it's not affordable. It needs to be affordable. I'm pretty confident it will be affordable. There'll be many players in this field in the next sort of 5 to 10 years. Tesla will obviously dominate, but you'll have people like Zoox, Waymo, other kind of companies as well, Cruise. A lot of companies will move into this space. There'll be lots of competition that will drive down prices, but most importantly of all, Tesla will have potentially 3, 4, maybe 5 million vehicles operating on this network quite consistently, and that will eat into demand for transport. Proper cycle lanes. We've got to have proper cycle lanes. I'm on the fence on this one because a lot of cycle lanes that have been built in my local area are not being used, but I suspect that is because there is not a large enough network and they're not interconnected. So I think you need multiple cycle lanes, like you need multiple metro lines. Trolleybus system, nice and simple to build, very cheap. You don't need to complicate things. But again, you need multiple lines. A lot cheaper than a tram network, way cheaper, and potentially can move almost as many people if you have enough buses. Having overhead lines is just a no-brainer for me. Otherwise, use battery-powered vehicles. But overhead lines in the long term will save you money and also give you more power and more reliability as well. And number 7, a toll road network with 60 to 95% coverage. If at least 60% of roads in your city or town are covered with a toll, you're going to go out and think twice about using your car. That will reduce demand for car ownership, and ultimately people will either get a robo-taxi, which you will share with someone else, so you will split that toll maybe with 2 or 3 other people, or you will use public transport, which won't be applicable to the toll road network, or you'll cycle, and I'm guessing you won't need to pay to do that. So those are solutions. You need to at least enact 4 of them to get rid of gridlock and do them in a big way. Obviously, this is my favoured solution, but again, on its own, it's not enough. We need to look at every single option. Right, I hope you enjoyed that episode. Remember, induced demand is just a term that transport planners try to throw at us, saying that it won't work, it won't work, it won't work. Trust me, a lot of factors are changing. The actual formula that you use for an induced demand is based on various things remaining stagnant. And a lot of those things are going to change massively over the next sort of 10 to 15 years. So remember, if someone's throwing the induced demand question at you, it doesn't really matter because things are changing for the better. And to a certain extent it is correct, but it applies to all forms of transport. Therefore, you need multiple different ways to get around your city. Okay, hope you enjoyed that. If you would please support me on Twitter, Discord, and drop me $2 or £2 on Patreon, that would be much appreciated. Thank you to all my new Patreons. We've got some new ones. Sorry to see a couple of you have left recently, but that's absolutely fine. I understand things are difficult at the moment. But we have Adam and EJDX84. Hope you continue to support us, and thank you very, very much. We very much do appreciate this. The new setup is working absolutely phenomenally beautifully. I wish I'd done it earlier. New Mac, new camera, new software. Everything is flawless. Okay, guys. Well, thanks for joining me, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care now, and remember, don't be boring. We'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.
Excellent!